tell him when we'll be returning?
Would that change anything?
It might give him some comfort.
At least that's something we can agree on.
Hey, is somebody meeting me here?
I'd certainly hope so.
It does seem like a dreadful place to be stranded.
Hello ladies and gentlemen and everyone beyond. I am BabyNoobCakes and this is PlayStation Plus free game reviews. And in this episode we're going to be taking a look at one of the February 2020 free games, Bioshock, the collection. And since this is actually a collection of 3 games, I'm going to be doing 3 separate reviews. Here we are at the final game in the series, Bioshock Infinite. Also, as a side note, back in December of 2019, the team that makes the Bioshock games teams that the 4th is in development, which is probably the reason we're getting this collection for free right now. But for now, let's get back to Bioshock Infinite. Since this game and the previous 2 were pretty story heavy, I will only be giving details on the beginnings of the plot so as not to spoil them. You may see some footage from later portions in the game though. As with the second review, in this third I'll be again comparing this one versus the previous entries. And since we're finally at the end here, I will be able to give my judgment about whether or not this collection is worth it. Bioshock Infinite has broken the mold on the standard formula, so this time we will start out at the lighthouse, but we won't go down into the ocean. We're gonna leave Rapture behind, and this time instead go high above the clouds to Columbia, in an attempt to answer the question, as one of the free games of the month, was it worth it? Mechanics. Bioshock Infinite is once again a first-person shooter, centered in a city where threats are around every corner, where you need to collect bullets, health packs, money, and upgrades if you want to survive. This time around, the developers actually made a lot of changes to the overall system of the game, and it mostly streamlines the process of playing. One of the smallest changes with the largest impact on the player is that you can no longer carry any health restoration items, anything which restores salt, which is this game's version of E from the previous titles, and to make up for this, you are able to survive a bit longer than you used to be able to, so it's not as big a deal as you think. You just have to be more aware of your current status before jumping into a gunfight. The developers did add one more thing to help you out though, a recharging shield that will soak a few bullets before they affect your health. As far as your health, your salts, and your shield levels, they can only be upgraded this time around by finding bottles of infusions hidden around the city. You can choose which stat to upgrade every time you find one. Additionally, you now only have 4 slots for your passive abilities, down from the possible 18 slots from Bioshock 2, and you can't add any more. They have been changed to clothing rather than gene tonics, and you have a slot for your hat, a shirt, pants, and boots. Each passive ability is tied to a specific type of clothing that can only be slotted into the specific gear type that it is, and you can only wear one piece of gear in each slot. Another pretty big change to the game is you can now only carry 2 guns at a time, which can be swapped with whatever you find in the field. You can still upgrade them, for money this time instead of the upgrade machines you found in the previous 2 games, but anytime you pick up that weapon again, it will still maintain all the upgrades you purchased. The standard array of first-person shooter weapons are present, with a few removed from the previous games and a few new ones added. Gone are the special weapon upgrades, and this time, you're limited to increases in clip size, damage, and recoil reduction. From the first 2 games, the powers, or as they're known there, plasmids, return, with quite a few changes as well. They're no longer called plasmids, they're now referred to as vigors, and are acquired by drinking them rather than intravenous injection. They are also powered by salts instead of Eve, which are functionally the same thing, but they've called it something different this time. Electricity and fire return, while most other powers have been modified slightly. Some have been removed entirely, and some others are brand new. Also returning is the ability to get the level 2 and 3 upgrades to these powers, which adds new functionality. Some of these include higher damage, longer durations, spreading powers which will affect multiple enemies at once. The list goes on. Before you even get these upgrades, however, you have the ability to hold and release the controller button on all vigors, where most of them will create traps of the vigor's effects, while others boost the effective power. Most of the enemies in Bioshock Infinite are functionally the same as a lot of the enemies from the first two games, with new coats of paint put on them. There are the general human citizens of the city, which are easily dispatched. There are turrets and gun drones, but this time they use balloons to fly instead of mechanical power. There are heavier enemies, which is where Infinite shines over previous editions, by having more and varied types of more difficult enemies. The big daddies have now been replaced by a new enemy called the Handymen, huge robotic bodies that only have a tiny pinch of humanity left in them. The Fireman, who appropriately shoots waves of fire at you, and the cherry on top, the motorized Patriots, mechanical George Washington robots kitted out with Gatling guns. Missing from this entry, though, are the Little Sisters, which makes sense since they were created in Rapture. To replace them, in the companion role they play in the second game, is Elizabeth. She is a young adult woman who helps you along your way through the city, and mechanically, she finds money and ammo lying around and will toss it to you in the middle of battle when you need it most. It may sound like she is an escort mission of the game, and she is, to an extent, but you don't have to worry about her at all. Normal enemies can't do anything to her. She's pretty self-sufficient and indestructible. There are two more additions that I have to mention. The first is the Sky Rail, a new way of locomotion around the map. Early in the game, you acquire a magnetized hook, which also acts as the melee weapon in this game, that you can use to hook onto rails that traverse the multiple floating islands of Columbia. Second, after you find Elizabeth, she is able to open dimensional tears in the fabric of reality to bring ammo, cover, and friendly turrets into the battlefield to swing the advantage to your favor. Art style. In Bioshock Infinite, you have a whole new city to explore in Columbia, which is almost the polar opposite of Rapture as far as colors and look. Rapture is a dingy, rundown, leaking, gothic city at the bottom of the ocean, while Columbia sits in the clouds, is made of bright white sandstone and marble, and has neoclassical architectural influences, like the US Capitol building and the White House. Clouds surround you as you float through the stratosphere in the fictional past of 1912. Compared to the first two games, this was a wild departure, and the art and setting both explain why this game wasn't just called Bioshock 3. The graphics really saw an upgrade in this sequel, and the consistent style throughout really shines as a very unique setting for a game. Sound.
Life would still go on, believe me. The world could show nothing to me.
Seeing as Bioshock Infinite is set in 1912, many years prior to the first two games in the series, the music this time around is based more on the turn-of-the-century tunes and has a more all-American feel overall. Once again, the 2K team also enlisted an awesome voice cast to tell their story. They all give great performances and match the dialects of the time period they are looking to emulate. Also, this time around, your character has his own voice.
Hello?
Mr. DeWitt?
Yes?
Hold for Mr. Fink, please.
What's going on?
DeWitt, Fink here. Listen, my boy, we've had our eye on you, and I can tell you right now that you are our top candidate. Top! Now, my associate, Mr. Flambeau, will help you with anything you need.
What the hell was that?
I have no idea.
He seems oddly pleased to make your acquaintance.
Replayability. Bioshock Infinite follows in its predecessor's footsteps and doesn't stray too far away from the relatively linear storyline. But as mentioned before, you don't have quite as much freedom with how you build your character as far as upgrades and passive equipment. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, since it actually kind of streamlines the way you play, and you have to spend less time in menus micromanaging your abilities. This third game in the series will last you about 12 to 16 hours, being pretty much on par with the first two. And this PlayStation Plus free offer also comes with all of the DLC that's available. The first DLC, called Clash in the Clouds, adds about 3 to 5 hours of gameplay, and offers a series of levels that contain waves of enemies that you must defeat, and a sort of museum that you can explore. Overall, this is pretty similar to the Protector trials from Bioshock 2. The other DLC is actually split up into 2 episodes, both entitled Burial at Sea. These in total will add between 5 and 8 hours to your gameplay, and they see Booker and Elizabeth, the 2 main characters of this game, in an alternate universe where they do end up in Rapture. So just in case you were missing the sea after your time in Columbia, you can go back and explore a short storyline with them this time, set before the fall of Rapture. Narrative. In Bioshock Infinite, you play Booker DeWitt, a private investigator with a troubled past. You are led to a lighthouse in the middle of the ocean by a couple in a rowboat, and your only objective being, "Bring us the girl to wipe away the debt." And you'll see this phrase repeated quite often throughout the game. You unknowingly jump into a rocket and blast off into the sky to find the floating city of Columbia. In the previous 2 titles, you had a guide for the city, Atlas in Bioshock 1 and Sinclair in Bioshock 2. This time around, you are sort of your own guide. As you are a private eye, you make your own deductions and decisions about how to proceed. In this game, your character actually has a voice, and will help you out with hints about where to go next and insights on what to do.
Still got a girl to find.
Once you find Elizabeth, she can also assist a bit in finding the way. But there is also a married couple, Robert and Rosalind Lutece, who are also kind of like your guide, but they only come around so often and are usually a bit more cryptic and concerned with their own selves than in truly helping you. Very early in the game, even before any violence happens, you find out that the people up here in Columbia, even though you've never been here before, know your character Booker already. However, they know him by another name, the False Shepherd, and identify him by the brand on the back of his right hand. This brand, of course, inevitably outs him as a person to pursue, and starts the main gameplay in Infinite, that you are being hunted by the people of Columbia. You also quickly learn about your antagonist, Father Zachary Hale Comstock, the Andrew Ryan stand-in in this game. He holds sway over almost all of the people of the city, and on his whim, they will do almost anything, as he is not only their established leader in being the main creator of Columbia, but is also the religious and spiritual leader of its people, holding a possibly stronger hold over the people than even Andrew Ryan was ever able to obtain. This brings up one of the main themes of the game, religion, and exclusionary practices that those with a closed mind can perpetrate. You learn very early in the game that the people of Columbia are racists, bigots, and want no change or disruption in their society, and will do anything to see that happen. Throughout the game, you will explore many mysteries, like why you've been sent to retrieve Elizabeth, why you're the hated target of the city even before you arrive, how is the city able to fly. You even explore a bit into the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Trust me, it's a lot cooler than that makes it sound. Also, you'll see what happens when people let belief and zealotry take over their entire life. Again, I won't get into anything specific so as not to spoil anything, but just know there is a lot going on, and much more than either of the previous 2 games. My opinion. Out of the 3 games in the series, Bioshock Infinite is not my favorite, but is such a close second to the first game. Both the first and third games are wonderful experiences, and as I said in my Titanfall 2 review, first-person shooters are not even my favorite types of games, but Bioshock has always been one of my exceptions. I didn't enjoy all of the changes that Infinite made, especially not the loss of the ability to carry all your guns, but the way they upgraded the powers that you get, and the story they tell in the game is really fantastic. I really love how deep they go into the overall Bioshock lore in this game, and they were able to keep the game compelling throughout, unlike number 2. Infinite does suffer from some of the same problems as number 2 during the end of the game, where most of the enemies are bullet sponges and can be a chore to take down. It's not as bad as Bioshock 2, especially with all of the upgrades the game has received, making it so that the combat doesn't get quite as bogged down and tedious because of all the new options that you have. One of those upgrades is the Sky Rail. It is one of the best additions this time around, adding a whole new level, literally, to the combat, keeping it moving, literally, at all times. Also, having Elizabeth by your side makes the experience not seem as lonely and desolate as the first two, keeping you more immersed and present in the story. And in all of video game history, this is finally an escort mission done right, where you don't have to worry about her at all. She won't be in the way, and she can actually save you by her well-timed toss of a health pack or ammo. I wish I could comment more into the later portions of the game's story, because I just found it so intriguing and unexpected. But again, I really don't want to spoil anyone else's time with the game. I'll just say that each of the Bioshock games have wonderful endings, uncovering secrets that you might not see coming. They explore a fantastical world, so similar to our own, yet so different, so advanced, and so alien. And no, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the secret is not aliens. The mix of compelling stories, tight mechanics, and bizarre civilizations are what keep me coming back to this series, and Bioshock Infinite is a worthy successor to the first two games. But what do I think of the included DLC that you get along with the collection? Up first is Clash in the Clouds, and holy cow, it is boring. Just like the Protector Trials from number 2, this is a series of waves of enemies that are just for scoring points and unlocking concept art. You can also unlock some music tracks and 3D models for your own little mini museum, which is fine and all if that's the type of thing that you're into. And they are pretty cool, but again, I would be upset if this was the first DLC of a season pass I had bought when the games debuted. But, and this is the biggest but in the review, but, Burial at Sea. Oh my god, Burial at Sea. This is almost another entire game within itself. An alternate version of Booker and Elizabeth visit Rapture in these 2 episodes, which each have their own flavor and style, and their own take on the Bioshock formula. These 2 episodes really blew me away. They rival the main games in their impactfulness of their storytelling and gameplay, and are both so beautiful, showing Rapture before the fall and how pretty it was in all its glory. No more dark, bland, square, concrete rooms like in Bioshock 2. This time, the whole world opens up, and you finally get to see what Rapture was like in its heyday. As much as I want to talk about the ending of the main game, I want to talk about these more, but I can't describe them any further without spoiling so much for anyone who hasn't played them. Just go play them. I never picked these up back originally when Infinite came out, and I missed out big time. In my opinion, I wish that Bioshock 2 had never been made, and that these 2 episodes would have been expanded just a bit more, and these had been the true sequel to Bioshock 1. Play them, now. Seriously, you are missing out if you haven't. Was it worth it? We've looked at all 3 games in the series, and compared them to each other, and experienced the journey that this series took. As shown by years of fans praising all 3 of these games, they've already earned their places as classics, but they are older games. And since this series was a pioneer of so many of the modern tropes and mainstays of first-person shooters, they don't have some of the quality of life improvements we've seen in more recent games. This collection updated the textures and other graphics from the originals, which debuted in 2007, 2010, and 2013 respectively. But they still don't fully stand up to the technology of today's games, if that's what you're looking for. Having all the DLC is nice, and getting 3 games together is always a bonus, but being from the previous console generation puts them at a slight disadvantage, and I know that there are a lot of people who've played these and probably still own them. Since these games were so popular, you might already own the collection from one of the other sales on the PlayStation Network, or back on the PS3 when they were new. In fact, Bioshock 2 was free on PlayStation Plus in December 2012, and Infinite was free in January 2014, so you might have already gotten these for free. So is the Bioshock collection worth it? Sure, yeah, it's totally worth it, especially if you've never had the chance to play them before, or if you just need a reason to play them again. They are definitely worth it. For the most part, they're all awesome games, and even if you don't like all three of them, you at least end up with some enjoyment. At least I did. And if I'm being totally honest, if you missed out playing the DLC missions from 2 and Infinite, and by that I mean Minerva's Den and the 2 episodes of Burial at Sea, they make this whole collection worth it just by themselves. Don't even bother with the Protector Trials or Clash in the Clouds, skip them. Unless my description sounded really awesome to you, but that's up to you. Between the 3 good DLC missions, you basically have a full-length Bioshock game, and they are all individually awesome stories in their own right. But maybe that's for you to decide. Whether you agree or disagree with my judgment, get at me in the comments. Let me know what you think, and let's discuss if this month's games were worth it or not. And by giving these out for free, maybe everyone will get more hyped for the future release of Bioshock 4. Do you think it will be set in Rapture again? Or maybe Columbia? Or maybe they'll give us a whole new city to explore? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Also, don't forget to go out onto the PlayStation Store and download your free games every month. Because hey, they're free, and sometimes you will end up with a few gems. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you later.